You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast, the hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. It's Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com. Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. There are ladies, things that makes it official. Welcome to the big show. We're starting with the amazing engine of the Chris Voss Show. That's what all that does. That it gets the engine lit up, turned on, gets the oil pumping, and all this stuff going on in your head to learn all the new things that are on the Chris Voss Show. As always, we have the most smartest, brightest people on the show. We never invite dumb people on. It's just the host who gets on the show because I entitled it The Chris Voss Show in 2009. And so I can be as dumb as I want. But that's why we have guests that are smart. See what we did there? We got it fixed. Anyway, we have an amazing young man on the show today. In the meantime, go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss, one of the TikTokity and all those crazy places on the internet. He is a gentleman who loves dogs, and who doesn't? And anybody who doesn't love dogs, you should give them the side eye, as it were. Owen Sharp joins us on the show with us today. He is the director and president of Dogs Trust USA. He was appointed there in July 2019, and prior to Dogs Trust, he was the global CEO and executive director of the Movement Foundation based in Culver City, California. Before November or Movember? Movember. Before Movember, the largest funder of America's health services and research, which works closely with the Prostate Cancer Foundation of the USA, Owen was CEO at Prostate Cancer UK and interim deputy at CEO at Victim Support. He rebranded the prostate cancer charity as Prostate Cancer UK and led a merger with Prostate Action. Sorry, I got to giggle that a little. And launched the high-profile Men United campaign. So women at that time were united in prostate action. Owen began his career. Sorry, I'm making fun of your prior businesses. I'm sorry, Owen.
It's fine.
I'm not sure what any of that means. He began his career nursing at Glasgow, Scotland, going on to work in leadership roles in hospitals across the UK, and was recently awarded a honorary doctorate at Glasgow Caledonian University. Animals have been a big part of Owen's life. He's a huge dog lover and lives in the UK with an 8-year-old Labradoodle, Dixie, and 2 other dogs. Dogs Trust Rescue Lexi. Is Dogs Trust Rescue 2-year-old Dogs Trust Rescue? Oh, it's from the rescue of the Dogs Trust. Is that what it is? Am I reading that?
That's right. Yeah. No, I rescued Lexi from Dogs Trust, and she rescued me by coming from Dogs Trust, depending which way around you put it.
We'll talk about that on the show because I've been rescued by dogs as well. So welcome to the show. And give us your .coms. Where do you want people to find you on the interwebs?
So great to be here, Chris. Thank you so much for the invite. Really brilliant to be talking to you. So dogstrustusa.org is where you will find all things Dogs Trust.
There you go. Dogstrust.org. There you go. I love dogs. So give us a 30,000 overview of what you guys do there.
So Dogs Trust, as the big main UK charity, has been around for 135 years. So we've been doing this for quite a long time. A Victorian charity that started looking after dogs in the UK when there was a real big problem with strays. As I said, we've been doing it for a long time. We registered as a charity in the USA in 2016. I joined in 2019, and we are all about supporting and helping organizations who are there to change the life of dogs. Primarily, our biggest focus is around population management, so spay and neuter programs and low-cost veterinary care, giving people who can't afford it access to reasonable veterinary care, because we know that's one of the biggest reasons that dogs end up in shelters and too often, I'm afraid, are facing euthanasia on too big a scale. So we're all about changing that in every single way that we can.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's going on in the UK, but I know here in America, one of the problems we're having is a lot of people got animals and dogs for pets during COVID because they were alone and they didn't want to have to talk to their spouse, evidently. um, and one of the problems we have is that they're now starting to dump these animals in shelters because they're just like, I'm kind of over this. COVID's over. I can go hang out with people. I don't need this dog anymore. Maybe they're moving to a place that, they're having to do stuff with, where they can't have dogs, which I think is unfortunate. Um, so is that happening in the UK too as well?
Yeah, it is. It's not an understatement to say that the animal welfare sector in the UK and most other parts of the world is facing its biggest challenge it's ever faced at the moment. So,
Mm-hmm.
by way of example, in the UK, we count the dog population every year, and just before the pandemic, it was 9 million dogs in the UK, and after the end of the pandemic, it went up to 12 million. So, an
Wow.
increase of 30+% in a very short space of time. And as you rightly say, coming out of the pandemic for a huge variety of reasons, there's loads of people who can't cope with those dogs. That might be because they've just kind of got bored of them, as you said. It might be because they're facing economic pressures, because we know
Mm-hmm.
the world is a expensive
Inflation.
place at the moment, and inflation. And we've seen the cost of pet food and vet care go up even higher than
Mm-hmm.
the overall rate of inflation. Or it may just be that those dogs actually weren't very well socialized during the pandemic. They're not great
Mm-hmm.
with other dogs, they're not great with people. So you put all that together, and you've got a shelter system that's under a level of pressure that it hasn't been under for a long, long time.
Yeah, I've seen places in California where they're just like, we can't take any more dogs.
Yeah,
We're full, and then of course no one seems to want them. You're right. Economics, the inflation has been bad for people. Housing has been expensive. One of the problems I've always had all my life of owning four huskies is I can't always move into the nicest places I want.
yeah,
I have to take a step down or two because, even though I can afford it, I could, some of the nicer places are like, yeah, you can't have a dog in the mansion, eh? We're just not pets, which I get, but it's kind of interesting to me. I've lived in houses with children, and as a realtor, seen houses that have children versus houses that have pets,
yeah,
and there's a lot more wear and tear with kids. I'm sorry. Those kids will drop all sorts of food on everything. I mean, when I was a kid, I poured grape juice in my parents' piano and freaking ruined it. Uh, yeah, sure, a dog might poop on the floor or pee on the floor until you teach him not to. But it's the other thing you mentioned is training. I wish more people would realize that the problem usually isn't the dog. The problem is the owner has to be smarter than the dog and train them properly. I've owned four huskies now, and probably coming up on our fifth here soon, in probably the next year. And I learned a long time ago that you got to be smarter than the dog, and you got to train them, otherwise they train you. And so when I see horrible dogs, it's kind of interesting how whenever I go to the dog park, the worst human beings that are they're just the awful ones. They're usually bullies there at the dog park. They usually have the worst dogs. They're the
yeah,
dogs that attack the other people, and then if you complain, then the people attack you, and you're just like, well, I see why your dog has a socialized problem because you have a socialized problem. But one of the problems with huskies too, and huskies are like have a hard time getting into shelters now,
yeah,
especially in like California where they're full. And there's some husky shelters that have been set up just for husky shelters because they can't get things. And there was a lot of them. They bought huskies during the Game of Thrones run because I
yeah,
guess there was wolves or dogs in there. So
yeah.
they were like, we're getting huskies. So all these people bought huskies from Game of Thrones influence. And then once they realized how much work goes into that dog, because it's a really hard dog to manage, um, they just threw them all back into these things. So, any thoughts on some of that I rambled on about?
Yeah, no, you are spot on, sir. You absolutely are spot on. So more than 50% of the dogs who are given up to shelters anywhere around the world are given up for behavioral reasons. And we believe that if you have the right knowledge, if you have the right skills, nearly all of those behavioral issues can be avoided. If you start to struggle, it's really important that you get help early on, because if you just ignore the problem, it gets worse and worse, and then people can't cope. And I think the other thing that you were saying that is absolutely right is that we really do need to educate people about the type of dog that they get. It is not just saying, I want a dog and I want that one that I've seen for whatever reason, be it a fashion reason, be it something that I've seen on a TV show or a movie. So, for example, in the UK and here in the US, we had a huge run on Belgian Malinois, which was the dog that was featured in the John Wick's movie. Now, that is not a dog for an inexperienced owner. They are incredibly active dogs, and you just see these trends all the time, and that drives poor breeding practice, because you get underground breeders who suddenly start just trying to meet that demand. So it really is being educated, not just in terms of once you've got the dog, but thinking about it beforehand. Is it a dog that you're going to have the adequate time to exercise, to train and work with, or do you need a simpler, smaller dog? So think about the one that's right for your lifestyle, not the one that you think is the right fashion accessory.
Yeah. As husky owners, we're really good at warning. Anytime I meet a new husky owner, I'm like, have you owned this dog before? Okay, you really need to do some research, because I spent the first year with my husky making her life hell and my life hell, and she made my life hell too, because I wasn't managing things right, and and then somewhere in the middle of the first year, I said, God damn it, I can't. There's so many problems. What the hell? And I finally looked up on the internet and read about stuff, and I'm like, oh, wow, okay. I should have read about this dog sooner.
Yeah.
And educated myself on what the challenges are and what I need to be aware of. And that helped a lot. And I think more people need to do it. Sadly, I come from this generation, which I think is very boomer, and I think Gen X bleeds into a little bit of it. There might be some people that still have this attitude, I think, that I've seen, but they just have this attitude of, you get a dog maybe for security or to make the kids happy, you chain it in the backyard to a box, and you forget about it largely.
Yeah.
And I think some people still have that attitude. I know here in Utah, I've seen dogs that are still treated that way. They're locked in the backyard, very few times allowed in the house because they're poorly trained, and it's just insane. So you guys have some goals you talk about on your website, called there's 3 goals you have. Number 1, poorly managed dog populations. Number 2, poor physical welfare. Number 3, dogs deaths caused by rabies. Talk to us about what these goals are, what they mean, and what you guys are trying to do to help.
Yeah, so it's 3 areas, and there are lots of other areas, but these are the ones that we think Dogs Trust USA can play the biggest part in. So the first one is population management. That is all about encouraging people wherever appropriate to get their dog spayed or neutered. We know the cost of that is going up hugely, and I've heard recently, kind of the average cost of getting a dog spayed or neutered, particularly if it's a slightly larger dog, has now gone over $1,000. That's crazy, and that's stopping people doing it. You end up with unwanted puppies. You just end up adding to the problem. So we work with and we fund organizations all across the US who run low cost or even free spay or neuter programs, and where they've been doing that for a long while, that really is changing the nature of the dog population. And alongside that, we work with organizations that provide good, affordable veterinary care. So, we're focused on what we would call the fundamentals of veterinary care. It's about being able to make sure that people can access veterinary care early, because if you ignore problems, they become chronic, they become much more expensive, and often they do lead to dogs being given up or turned out in the street and become part of the stray population. So we work similarly with organizations who work in that space, and there are great organizations all across the United States doing that.
How can
The
people
third,
do? I'm
sorry,
sorry. How can people do more to support shelters, or do more people need to try and get involved in starting shelters, or how do we solve the shelter problem? Do we need to educate people more on how, what dogs are about before they buy them and how to get them, or how do we overcome that whole shelter issue?
Yeah, it's a fabulous question. I mean, I personally, I don't think the answer is more charitable foundations and shelters, because
Mhm.
you just end up at proliferation. You've got a great network. We've got it in the UK and you've got it in the USA
All right.
as well. They are organisations that need help and support, and frankly, they all need money. So if you're ever in a position to donate to organisations like that, then please do so. They certainly need volunteers. These organisations very often can't exist without the contribution of volunteers. So if you are ever able to give any of your time to volunteer for them, and that doesn't even have to be direct voluntary care. You might be somebody who's got accountancy skills, or you might be somebody who's got HR skills. They can often benefit from having that sort of support as well. And then the third thing that people can do is become adopters or become foster carers. We've got too many people who are automatically going out and sourcing new dogs, getting dogs from various places on the internet. Go and get your dog from a rescue organization. And to do that, be patient. Don't expect to just turn up on the first day and have the ideal dog. Go talk to them. Don't go in with preset views about what sort of dog you want. Go and talk to them about your lifestyle, and they will find you the right dog. They might not find it on day one, but they will find it for you.
I like that idea. I like that idea. And learn to train. One of the things
Yeah.
that really helped me with my dog, and it was just probably something, it was by default and luck. But one of the problems I was having with my husky and watching the dog whisperer guy, I'm not endorsing him or saying he's the greatest or whatever. Don't come at me with hate. All I'm saying is I watched an episode of him with with a husky, and I was like, okay, well, I'm watching this episode because I have huskies and I can't control them for shit. And so watching the episode did help me. Now I know for some reason he's a little controversial. I can't remember what it is, but some people, anytime I've told that story, they throw shit. So just realize I'm not endorsing him in any way, shape, or form. I'm just saying it really helped that episode. Because I watched how he handled the husky, and I think it's an example of what more people need to get trained in. Maybe before we allow people to have a dog, they should have to go to school for it. Just kind of like I believe you shouldn't be allowed to be a parent unless you go to school and also work out your psychological issues ahead of time. But that's me. No one seems to care anyway. They're just like, yeah, we'll just wing it, and who cares if we screw up some kids. But there's that.
I'm not doing the childcare thing. Dogs is big enough problem to solve.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I have some people that they need to be their breeding needs to be regulated. They need to be they need to have some what is it called, where they anesthetize the dog. Not anesthetize them, but anyway. Jokes aside, let's get in number 3 where I cut you off on dogs deaths caused by rabies.
Yeah, so a lot of people don't realize, but rabies is a huge problem across the globe. So
Wow.
Dogs Trust USA focuses on it, but the main thing that we're trying to do is essentially raise awareness and raise funds for work going on in other parts of the world. But to give you a context, one person every 8 to 9 minutes dies of rabies somewhere in the world.
Really?
Yeah, it's still a very dreadful disease, and that is probably a massively underreported number. Rabies, by far the most common source of people getting rabies is from dogs, and that's just because dogs live in such close proximities to people all around the world. The big parts of the world that are most affected by rabies are Southeast Asia, so places like Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam. India is the place where more people die of rabies than anywhere else, and that's probably just down to population density, and sub-Saharan Africa. So it's a dreadful disease. If you get bitten or scratched by an animal with rabies, you've really only got 24 hours to seek treatment. And in most of the parts of the world that people live in where rabies is endemic, you're just not going to get that treatment. And after those 24 hours, it is 100% fatal, and it's not a nice disease to die of. But the good news is that rabies is 100% preventable. There is a vaccine that exists that you can give to animals. And if you can vaccinate 70% of the animals in a population, then you will drive rabies out of that area if you keep that level above. So what we do through partner organizations that we have as part of the Dogs Trust family called Mission Rabies, they do two things. First thing is they do mass vaccination campaign. So as we speak, there are about 200 volunteers, many of whom have come from the US, are currently vaccinating dogs in Phnom Penh in Cambodia. And in 2 weeks, we will vaccinate 200,000 dogs. And that is a really big step towards getting that vaccination level above the 70%. And then the second thing we do is we work with local organizations. We train people to become what we call paravets. So train people who don't have to be full veterinary surgeons, but might work in the animal health care field, how to catch, handle dogs safely, and to give them a vaccination. And so it is a solvable problem. Our ambition is to halve the number of human deaths from rabies in the next 5 years. And over the next 20 to 25 years, we want to see the total elimination of canine-mediated rabies. So it's a big ambition, and it's going to involve scaling up all of the efforts that we do, but we think it's eminently doable. And so we talk to a lot of our donors in the US about doing that, both in terms of giving us funds to support us do it, but also to become part of the volunteer network. So in particular, we're working with vets and veterinary surgeons from all across the US who take part in this work that we do all around the world.
Nice. And I'm glad you guys do that. Do the police or the animal control, do they still put dogs down if they don't have their rabies tags? Because they don't know, right? If they don't have their rabies tags on them. I think I heard once that they tend to put dogs down if they can't clarify that they have rabies or not when they pick them up. You know, they catch them running around. You know, huskies are notorious for that, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I haven't heard that, to be honest with you, but I'll be honest, it wouldn't surprise me. You do hear lots of things that there are pockets of where that is still happening. I mean, you can quarantine a dog and check to see whether it's showing signs and symptoms, and any dog can be given the vaccine there and then. But certainly we would encourage anyone in a place where rabies exists to get their dog vaccinated against rabies.
Yeah. One of the, I went through some hard times after, was it 2000? I think it was in 2008 when the mortgage crash business, and we lost all of our companies, which number one was a mortgage company. And when we did it, I had moved to Vegas. I didn't have really a doctor for us or anything, but I needed to get rabies shots for both my dogs. And at the time, I was able to go to an IFA and buy the rabies shots and administer them myself. And I think it was like $8, $12 per dog. And really, I just needed to know the skill to make sure I took the air out of the shot before I injected it. Otherwise, I'd probably kill them. Thank God the IFA person told me that. But other than that, I gave them their own rabies shot at a very cheap rate. And I was pretty broke back then because we lost everything. We got wiped out. So I had to start basically from zero again. And thankfully, I had skill and knowledge. But, but I guess you can't do that anymore. Like I think I went years back to get my rabies done again, and I have money now. But I was just like, I want to save money. But now, if I want to get rabies done, I can't go to IFA anymore. Evidently, Intermountain Farmers Association is what that's called. And now I got to go pay. I think it's $75 for a visit because I have to pay for the visit for the doctor on top of the thing. And that with people that are struggling, that are out there, I've got money. I still find it egregious to pay that much for what used to be an $12 shot I get IFA. But I can see that if people are struggling with inflation, paying the bills, they've got a bunch of kids and all that sort of stuff. Daycare has gone through the roof. I don't have any of those issues. It can be hard to do the rabies thing. Even I kind of hate doing it. I'm just kind of like, geez, do we really have to do that? But they're in the yard. There's raccoons that come into my yard, skunks that come in my yard. You name it, they'll get into it with them. So I don't know any of your thoughts on that. Maybe making it cheaper to have people get access to these things.
Yeah, 100%. I think there's a real degree of us shooting ourselves in the foot here, that we've got relatively cheap things that people are being discouraged from getting because the costs have just got out of control. And there is a real challenge in many parts of the world, the USA, in the UK as well, that veterinary costs are just going through the roof. So a lot of the work that Dogs Trust USA does in setting up and supporting organizations that do access to low cost vet care, things like rabies vaccine, is part of that. The other challenge that we're facing at the moment, and it's certainly not unique to rabies vaccinations, but it is impacting big, is that there just isn't the stocks of vaccines that was before, because so much vaccine production was shifted during the pandemic to producing the COVID vaccine. We've not caught up with ourselves yet. So one of the things that we're trying to do and work with pharmaceutical companies is to really encourage them to try and find ways to get vaccine production up for rabies vaccine. And I know other disease types are working with them around that as well, because if we want to scale up and solve this problem, one of the biggest limiters is actually going to be the vaccine. It's a relatively cheap vaccine. It's that our costs, and we do get the vaccine at discount from some pharmaceuticals, so thank you to them because they do a great job. But for us, overall, to get a dog vaccinated, so not just the price of the vaccine, but actually to get it into the animal, it costs us approximately $4. And that statistically, every 1,000 vaccines you give, you will save the life of one child if you're giving them to in places where vaccines rampant. So, you're talking for $4,000, you are saving the life of a child statistically. So you can see that if we can start to aggregate this up and to start getting it happening at scale, we can truly transform the lives of lots of people, lots of dogs. Because if you live in a part of the world where rabies is prevalent, then the relationship between dogs and people is not going to be good, because you are fundamentally frightened of them. And so you can never solve any other welfare problems if you've got a population that's got rabies that is running rife in it. So we have to solve this problem around the world to actually change the relationship between people and dogs in all part of the world.
Yeah. I mean, I think I might understand why they made it so you couldn't get access to rabies shots. I think local cities, I know that where I live, when my dogs get the rabies things, they're registered with the city. Probably that's the same data that goes to the dog catcher if the dog catcher picks up my dog. Are they called dog catchers anywhere? I don't think so. Boy, I'm old. But, if they pick up my dog, they can check their records because my understanding is my vet sends those records to the city, and so they're there. And they get like a specialized tag that says, this dog has been checked for rabies. And I think maybe it was just to get some control over that. But creating that barrier to that medicine that was really cheap and that I could do it when I was broke, because I know a lot of broke people are out there today.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate. And so people are just going to not go to the vet. They're not going to get the shots if there's a barrier of price. And, if it's such a big fucking deal, which it is from what you're telling me, let's make it cheap. It's like insane. Do you want to save people or do you want to make money? And sadly, it's gotten expensive to do dog stuff. When I first got my dogs, it was relatively cheap in the 90s to get your dog all the work done. And now it's gotten so expensive. It's just crazy. And I think that's another reason people give up on their animals and care. It looks like you guys have some projects. You support some organizations that love dogs as well here in the U.S. You've got some educational stuff on how to find the right partner and do stuff. How can people support you? The people that are out there listening to the show, what are the ways they can get involved with Dogs Trust? What can they do to get involved and help?
It's a great question. So if you go to the website, so dogstrustusa.org, you can see all the work that we're doing. The number one thing that people can do to support is to donate to us. Any donation does make a huge difference. Mm-hmm. What we do is work with a network of shelters across the USA. So you're quite right. You say currently we've kind of supporting around about 63 organizations all across the country. Most recently, we made awards to another 6 that we're working with who are in various states that have some real challenges. So we were working with organizations in Kentucky, in Tennessee, in Mississippi, in Florida, and in California, all of whom face real challenges. And they're not always in the most obvious places. So, for example, the organization that we're working with in California are up on the edge of the wine producing areas up there, so up right at the top of Sonoma County. And you get huge number of dogs coming in with workers coming in and out. to support the wine industry, and they often bring dogs with them. Those dogs aren't spayed or neutered. You end up with unwanted puppies. There's very, very poor access up there. So what they've set up is both a clinic in a centre, but also they go out and do mobile work. So they go out and do mobile clinics. So all of those things are what Dogs Trusters USA is all about. So we're directly supporting those organisations. But the other thing that we do is we bring them together as a network, and they can support one another as they develop things. And they can also draw support from Dogs Trust in the UK, who, as I said, have been doing this for 130 years. So we've been kind of round the block. We've made plenty of mistakes. So as people are starting to develop new services, thinking about new ways of working, they can draw on the experiences that we've had in the UK as well. So we've created this network of organisations who are supporting one another, sharing best practice, but most importantly, often sharing what hasn't worked, because there are lots of great ideas out there that people are exploring. So yeah, go to our website, see what we're doing. You'll find about the organisations that are out there. But if you'd like to sign up to what we're doing, you can become a friend of Dogs Trust USA. You can become a donor. It's a great journey to be on, and we can make a real difference to the lives of a lot of people and a lot of dogs.
Oh yeah, we love dogs. The more I get to know people, the more I love dogs. That's what we like to say around here. So yeah, I didn't realize rabies was so bad. So I'm glad you're educating people on that. I was kind of on the fence, and maybe a lot of people are. They're like, it's kind of eradicated. Do we really need to do it? But it sounds like from the data you've given me, we definitely need to stay on that. So people can get involved. You got a newsletter they can sign up for as well. I just signed up for it, so people can check that out and get involved any way they can by supporting you guys.
Absolutely, yeah. Please do sign up. You can become part of a big movement here that's going to make a huge difference. And as you said, we've got issues that lots of people are not talking about. Rabies, it's under a relatively level of control in the USA, but globally it's a huge problem, and we need to stay on top of it. And like you said, there are lots of challenges to be met out there. So if you can be part of this exciting journey for us, you can make a real difference if you love dogs. And as you said, what sane person doesn't love dogs?
Yeah. And if you don't help out, you hate dogs. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. I'm teasing. Just doing the jokes, folks. Guilt's everything on the Chris Voss Show. So anyway, thank you for coming on the show. Give us the .org and whatever else we need to know about. And as we go out.
Yeah, so please go along to dogstrustusa.org and find out all about Dogs Trust. Become part of this journey. Become part of this movement to change the lives of many dogs. We'd love to have you on that journey. It's going to be exciting.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, Mountains, for tuning in. We really appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you very much, Owen.
Delighted to take me. Really great. Good chat.
There you go. Folks, save dogs. Dogs are awesome. They love everyone. Cats hate people half the time and love people half the time. Dogs love people 100% of the time. I'm not saying cats are bad or anything. Maybe so. But we love cats. We love all animals. I have a hard time anytime I see any animal suffering. I have a hard time seeing it. And so let's all be better humans to each other, be more benevolent, and take better care of our animals. Thanks for everyone for tuning in. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss one, the TikTokity, and all those crazy places on the internet. Be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you next time. And that should have us out.